Divine General Mahoraga. In the world of JJK, there are many powerful sorcerers with unique abilities that stand on the top of the Jujutsu world, each wielding all sorts of powerful abilities that cause changes to occur across the entire world of JJK. But even though they had these powerful abilities, there was one being in particular that was able to overcome all of these abilities. The only one in history that had the ability to do so. The final summon to the 10 Shells technique. Divine General Mahoraga. A being with the ability to adapt to every and all phenomenon in the world of JJK. And today we're here to see just what would happen if that ability was transferred over to the world of Black Clover. What if Mahoraga's adaptability had been transferred over to Asta? Will things play out differently? Well, it's time to find out. And before we begin this what if, I do want to give a shout out to the person who recommended this what if idea. I saw your comment, so here's the what if. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and thank you for the awesome what if idea. I hope you enjoy it, and also everyone else that's watching. And now with that being said, y'all, it's your host Hage right here, and it's time for us to begin the what if. So with that being said, let's get started.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
So to begin the what if, we're now gonna start off with Asta's origins. Dating way back, all the way to the point of Asta's birth, we see him currently right now being held by his birth mother, this being Lichita, as she'll be currently right now staring at Asta with a conflicted expression on her face. As today was supposed to be the happiest day of Lichita's life, but unfortunately she was currently right now faced with the hardest decision that she will ever make. This being the fact that she was stuck in the decision of whether to leave Asta behind at an orphanage or take a risk and keep him with her. Because you see, Lichita had been born with a curse, the curse to absorb the life force of any living thing around her, and that includes human beings. As basically any human being that even approached her, or they stuck by her long enough, they could eventually die from her curse. And that was something that Lichita most definitely did not want to do to anyone, especially her own child. So when she thinks about this, she obviously knows that she needs to put Asta, far away from her, to keep him safe and protect them from falling from her curse. But at the same time, she just simply could not handle the thought of parting with her child, as after all, this was something that she waited for such a long time. She spent multiple months waiting for Asta's birth, and now that he's here, she basically has no choice but to separate from him. It was unfair in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, that was something that needed to be done. That was something that Lichita knew she had to do. But as she was trying to gather enough willpower to actually go through with it, all it took was one simple look at Asta. As she would turn to look at her child that was just recently born, and when she sees his young, innocent sleeping face, that was enough to completely crumble away her willpower and cause her to break down. She apologizes to him over and over again, as unfortunately, Lichita did not have enough willpower to part with Asta. So that means that Asta would not be dropped off at the orphanage at Hage and would be instead living with Lichita. As during this moment, we would actually see Lichita think that this was the day that she sealed Asta's fate, but little did she know just how true she meant by that. As you see, this is where we now do a time skip. As flashing forward to the next few years that gone by, we actually end up seeing Asta being raised by his mother Lichita, and to Lichita's absolute happiness and delight, Asta was somehow, someway able to resist her life absorption curse. And you know what, resist is not a good way to say it, more like he was completely unaffected by it. Now this will be one of the biggest mysteries to Lichita. She had no idea why or how it was even possible. Maybe it was because of the fact that Asta shared the same blood as her, or maybe because of the fact that Asta just simply was born without magic, but to her it didn't really matter, as the one thing that she ever wanted had finally come true, this being the fact that she actually is able to raise her child and be there for him. As throughout this time, we actually see a very wholesome montage as we see Asta being raised by Lichita, as Asta would develop a very similar personality to his canon self, as he would be of course taking after Lichita by quite a lot, with the only real difference being the fact that Lichita was way more mature than Asta. But other than that, both of them were basically the same person. As after flashing through these last final years, we eventually now turn to when Asta will be at the age of 8, as during this time we will see Asta currently right now helping out Lichita around the entire house, making sure to be a good and supportive son. But during the time of cleaning up the house, this is when Lichita will then rush in, as this is when she will be carrying a very hurt and injured Libe, as he will be there currently unconscious, with Asta rushing over to try to help his mother the best way he could. As after that, we will see the two of them actually help out when it comes to taking care of Libe until eventually he ends up waking up. As is when the family of 2 then turned into a family of 3. As from that moment on, after helping out Libe and helping him recover, soon Libe would actually end up joining the family, as basically he'll be Asta's brother. As Legita was now even more happy, as now she had not 1 but 2 sons now, as she'll be living in her happiest moments. As this will continue on for quite a while as basically just another wholesome montage. As honestly, the 3 of them just seem like a perfectly well, good, and happy family. Until one day, all that would then soon end up coming crashing down. In typical shonen fashion. Cause on a very certain day, we end up seeing tragedy struck. As it was during the day that the family was currently out on a picnic. As Legita was very much happy about it, as she was currently cooking up a meal, while both Libe and Asta are currently right now playing, while at the same time also making sure to help out Legita whenever she asked for it. As during the time of both Asta and Libe playing tag, this is when Asta will then try running away after he tagged Libe, with Libe trying to chase after him only for him to stop. As Libe begins to just be there frozen, with Asta catching notice of it and turning around, but when he does, his heart stops for a moment. As currently right now, he will see that half of Libe's face was being taken over by another demon, this being Lucifero. As during this time, this will be the moment where Lucifero would actually try to use Libe as a door to enter the mortal realm, as he begins thanking Libe for actually being useful for once in his entire life. As Libe, after hearing what Lucifero was trying to do, he actually begins to break down, as he begins to ask Asta for help while crying. And seeing his brother crying, this of course enrages Asta, as he ends up letting out a battle cry before tackling Libe down to the ground and glaring angrily at Lucifero, telling him to let go of his brother now. But Lucifero, after hearing this, instead of giving back Libe, would actually laugh at Asta's face, as Asta will get even angrier. As for the next few moments, we will see Asta trying his best to remove Lucifero from Libe, but unfortunately, Asta was not able to do anything. As soon after trying this multiple times, Lucifero would then backhand Asta using Libe's arm that he was in control of, causing Asta to be sent flying and crashing into the ground right beside Libe, as he would nearly fall into unconsciousness after the blow. And this will cause Libe to look at Asta in horror as he calls out his name. Now, due to all the screaming, this will end up catching the attention of Legita, who ends up rushing over to the scene, and what she sees ends up horrifying her. As already putting all the dots together, she immediately rushes over to Lucifero and immediately demands him to let go of her son angrily. But Lucifero just continues laughing until suddenly Legita begins using her magic in order to seal Lucifero away. Now, this will cause the demon to of course be very pissed off, as trying to use as much magic as he possibly could at the moment, Lucifero would then use Libe's own arm and use it to strike Legita, dealing her a fatal blow. Now, this would of course horrify Libe and also Asta, who was trying his best to get up from the ground. As seeing his mother injured, Asta tries his best to rush over and tries his best to get there as quickly as he can, but unfortunately for Asta, it was way too late. As turning back to the scene with Legita, we see her currently right now using her last bit of strength to seal away Lucifero, but soon after doing this, she would then realize that will still not be enough to stop Lucifero from using Libe once again. So using her last bit of energy one last time, she uses it to seal Libe inside a grimoire, while also giving Libe some comforting words, as he was of course crying and of course having a horrified expression out of everything that just happened. As Legita made sure to let Libe know that none of this was his fault. As after making sure to remind this to Libe, while at the same time also letting him know how much she loved him, eventually Legita will seal Libe inside the grimoire. And this will be the scene that Asta will stumble upon as he looks at everything that just happened with a horrified expression. As this is where we then suddenly see Asta rush over to Legita, as he'll be trying his best to try to stop the bleeding and overall try to stop the situation, but unfortunately Asta knew that there was nothing he could do. As Legita looks at Asta in his desperate attempt, she will smile at him before suddenly saying her final words, pretty much telling Asta how much she loved and cared about him, how much she cared about the two brothers in general, and basically telling Asta to never change and also look after Libe. So basically the both of them to look after each other, as she tells them that even in the afterlife she will be looking after them. As after saying those final words to Asta, this is when Legita will then pass away. As now with Legita gone, this is where we then see Asta collapse down to the ground, as he will end up just looking at it in pure terror, as this will be the day that Asta's once wholesome and peaceful life had been taken away from him. As now with the end of this tragic and sad event, this is where we now do a time skip. Flashing forward after these events, we end up seeing Asta once again, but by this point it's already been a couple of days since Legita's death. By this point, an entire grave has been built for her, and overall, Asta has been doing everything he could by himself, but unfortunately it wasn't going too well. Asta throughout this time was just an emotionless husk, as basically he was in a very depressive state and overall he had just no idea what to do. But soon, one day, it would all come to an end as Asta would then visit his mother's gravesite once again. As Asta would end up arriving, as he ended up bringing some flowers and some water, as he made sure to place them right beside Lichita's grave. As after doing this, he would then decide to sit there right next to Lichita, as when he does, this is when we would then see Asta fully break down. For the first time in a couple of days after those events, we see Asta truly breaking down as he ends up just cursing how unfair everything was, as he begins apologizing to Lichita, apologizing for not being able to save her, apologizing for not being able to know what to do at the very moment, and overall just apologizing for everything, as by this point Asta was just releasing everything. As all the bad and negative feelings that Asta had built up had finally been released in one ginormous burst. As Asta continues crying and releasing everything before finally just crying and looking down at the ground as he admits that he doesn't know what to do once again, as he asks Lichita for some advice or really a sign or anything. And for a moment it just stays there quiet, no response at all, as Asta of course obviously expected this. But after shedding a couple more tears, this is when Asta will then look back at the gravestone that he created for Lichita, and when he does, he stares at it for a solid moment before suddenly getting a determined expression. As Asta will then hear Lichita's words ringing in his ear during the time right before she passed away, as he remembered her telling him to look after Libe and for the both of them to look out for each other, how much he cared about the two of them, and also for him to not blame himself, and also not to blame Libe as well. As Asta would listen to basically her final words to him over and over again on loop in his mind, this is when Asta would then get up, as he would then look down at the gravesite one last time before suddenly pulling out a book, this being the grimoire where Libe was sealed in. As after looking at the book, this is when Asta would then close his eyes before making a vow to Lichita, making sure to honor her final words, to protect Libe and for the both of them to look after each other, as well as he makes his own vow, as he swears on his mother's grave that he will hunt down and take down Lucifero himself, and there was nothing and there was no one that was going to stop him from fulfilling these promises. As after making these final promises in his mind, this is when we would then see Asta leave, as this is where we then do another time skip. As we now turn to a couple months later after these events, as we end up seeing Asta once again. Now throughout this time, we see Asta actually living on the road, as he'll be getting from one place to another, scavenging for money, working hard for it, and throughout this time he'll be just trying to stay strong for Libe. As Libe, even after all these months that went by, was still coping with the events that happened to the entire family, as he'll be apologizing to Asta over and over again, which at least that was the only good thing about it. This being the fact that Libe had actually grown strong enough to build a mental connection to Asta through the grimoire, basically having both Libe and Asta being able to communicate even though they were not face to face. Now Asta had told Libe multiple times that he did not blame him, and speaking of Asta, throughout this entire time as they had been on the road, Asta had developed quite a lot. And by that I mean that Asta's entire personality has changed. Now if you're thinking that Asta is like all serious and dark and everything, then you'll be wrong. As instead, Asta had gotten his personality from the main timeline, except there was a big difference. This being the fact that number one, Asta was way more in control of himself. This being the fact that Asta didn't scream as loud, and overall Asta made sure to keep his emotions in check during certain situations. And not only that, but Asta had also gained maturity. As living on the road throughout the next following months that went by, Asta had really saw the world for how it truly was, and this caused Asta to get more mature, especially since he needed it to take care of not only himself but also Libe. So due to this, Asta's personality, although energetic and cheerful, he was also much more responsible, mature, and refined, as due to this, Asta was able to go throughout life remaining strong and being able to support both himself and Libe. So already we see a big change in Asta, but that was not the only thing that happened throughout the 8 months, as this is where we also find out that Asta had discovered his ability, and not only that, but Asta had actually shown that he was way stronger than his canon counterparts during this point. Because you see, thanks to Asta being on the road throughout these months, Asta had encountered his few shares of bad apples, aka bandits, thieves, and just a generous amount of criminal scum. And due to this, Asta had to fight multiple times, since many of them saw a little kid like him traveling around and thought of him as nothing more but an easy lick, especially when they see him walking around with money. So due to this, Asta had to fight quite a lot. which ends up causing Asta to go another step further when it comes to his development. This being the fact that Asta awakens his ability. As during one of the very first ever times that Asta had faced off against an enemy, we actually see the enemy more than willing to use magic on Asta, as we see him shoot a fire attack directly at Asta, which ends up causing him heavy damage. Now this of course causes Libe, who was still inside the grimoire, and even though he was still in a grieving state, to immediately get enraged. But to both Asta and Libe, as well as the man who was currently fighting Asta's surprise, Asta would regenerate from the blow. His body would return back to his regular condition, as Asta would be looking at himself in complete shock. Now the man will be of course caught off guard by it, but he would try using magic once again. And to his absolute surprise, when he threw fire at Asta, Asta had been able to completely just simply walk through the attack like it was nothing. Now seeing this happen right in front of his eyes, this will cause the man to be immediately caught off guard by it, but before he could collect himself and get back into fighting Asta, it was already too late, as Asta had approached the man and immediately barraged him with blows, knocking the man out and winning Asta the fight. With this fight actually causing a pattern to occur every single time Asta would face off against different enemies, as it would always be the same thing. Asta would get hit by their magic, and soon Asta would of course take some damage but then soon heal from it, and after that when they try using their magic again or throwing out a different attack, Asta would just simply become immune to their type of magic. No matter what attack they threw at Asta, Asta had been able to walk through it, be completely unfazed by it, and just simply adapt to it, which caused Asta to realize his ability to adapt to every and all types of magic in this world. It didn't matter what type of magic it would be, whether it be elemental magic like fire, water, wind, and earth, it didn't matter. Or it could be even unorthodox magic. For example, chain magic, as there was a time when he actually fought Revchi. As yes, Asta ends up facing off against Revchi much sooner than he did in the main timeline. Since thanks to Asta taking down all these enemies, he has gotten quite a bit of notoriety, especially that of the bad kind, causing many bounty hunters to go after Asta, but all fail every single time they try to go after him, with Revchi being one of them. And thanks to all this, Asta had grown quite strong, as thanks to him finding out about this ability, Asta was able to go throughout life much easier. Any enemies that messed with him were immediately being able to be taken care of, and not only that, but this caused Asta to realize even more things. As although yes, he has the ability to adapt to all types of magic, he also has number one, unparalleled strength. As Asta, mind you, was still a kid throughout this time, yet with a single punch he's able to send grown men flying. And not only that, but over time Asta's durability as well as pain tolerance has skyrocketed, had evolved, as now only really heavy attacks or specific targeting attacks can really do any lasting damage on Asta. And not only that, but even if Asta were to get hit by these attacks, most of the time he would just simply end up grunting and shrugging it off before regenerating, since he has built up his pain tolerance as well, after facing off against so many opponents for so long. As now that I finished this explanation, this is where we now cut to the present. Now currently turning to Asta, we see him right now actually stopping at none other than Hage village. As throughout the time of traveling, Asta eventually ended up arriving right here, unknowingly the place where he was supposed to be dropped off in the canon timeline. As Asta would be here, he would just be looking around for some food, as currently right now Asta had just recently finished a job and was deciding to get some food for himself. Now while doing this, he would also be talking to Libe, who just silently listened to Asta as he continues trying to tell Libe to open up and just simply talk to him. But throughout the time of doing this is when Asta would then soon encounter Father Orsi, who ends up approaching Asta, wondering exactly why it was a kid like him by himself, while Asta basically explained that he was homeless. Now this will end up causing Orsi to be quite surprised by it, all the while Asta wasn't really shocked by it anymore, mostly because of the fact that he got used to it. After multiple months of living on the road, Asta just kinda is mad about the whole homeless situation. But Orsi unfortunately cannot handle that, as this is when he immediately begins to try to invite Asta to the orphanage, stating how Asta would actually get home cooked meals, how Asta doesn't need to be on the road, and how he doesn't need to sleep, on the streets or anything. Well, Asta trying to tell him that it was fine, but Orsi was very insistent, as there was no way that he was going to let Asta continue his life on the road while he was here. And just seeing his determination when it came to helping him, this would actually cause Asta to respect Orsi quite a lot for this, as after thinking over about his options one last time, this is when Asta would then accept the invite to join the orphanage, as this will be the beginning of Asta's stay at Hage village, as we now end up doing another time skip. As flashing forward through the years that went by, we eventually end up seeing Asta once again, but by this point Asta is of course much older and was currently right now heading off to take the Magic Knight entrance exams along with Yuno. As turning a brief moment to Asta's time throughout the years at Hage Village, we see that Asta quickly became accustomed to his life here. As already, as soon as he joined the orphanage, he was actually welcomed in with open arms and everything, as everyone treated him as if he has been here throughout his entire life, causing Asta to quickly warm up. And over time, we see Asta actually following pretty similar to his canon counterpart, with the only difference being the fact that, number one, people at the orphanage generally respect Asta, as Asta does have his mature moments, and not only that, but he has way more control over himself. Also, throughout this time, we also see Asta continuing on with his training, with the only real big difference here being the fact that after so many years, eventually, Asta was able to communicate with Libe breaking down and apologizing to Asta about everything. As after the whole years that went by with Lichita gone, eventually Libe was finally able to move past it. But he does end up stating that he wouldn't stop at nothing to get revenge for their mother, as he swears to kill Lucifero, with Asta agreeing to help out, as after all, that was a vengeance for the two of them. So due to that, this is where Libe then begins to make a similar vow to Asta, this being the fact that he vows to protect Asta, and he vows to continue making his brother safe, making sure to grow stronger to defeat Lucifero, and basically pulling a very similar vow to what Asta did earlier before, when Asta was a kid. So with that, we got Asta actually training with Libe much sooner, and going down the timeline, we see more things just follow up with the canon, as Asta eventually saves Yuno Pendant from that one guy after they went out to get groceries, with of course Yuno actually realizing just how strong Asta was, since in this timeline Asta had no difficulty at all when it came to taking him down, which ends up causing Yuno to want to improve much more, as now he wants to actually try to reach similar levels to Asta. As this is where we then see Asta's and Yuno's rivalry then begin, with Yuno even firmly declaring that he's going to become the Wizard King, while Asta smiling telling Yuno to go for it, as in this timeline Asta does not want to become Wizard King. Unfortunately, no, Asta already has another goal in mind, as instead Asta just wants to make Lichita proud, fulfill her final wishes, take down Lucifero, and maybe even eventually start up his own family, as basically Asta wants to pull off something similar to what Lichita did, create a new and wholesome life, but this time he wants to fully protect it, just like his mother had protected them. So with that, this is where we now cut to the present once again, as we see Asta and Yuno finally finishing up packing, as they soon say goodbye to everyone at the orphanage that was there to send them off. As with that, this is where we then see both Asta and Yuno then head off on their journey to the Magic Knight entrance exams, as we now end up doing a change of scenes as well as a time skip. Turning to when they eventually end up arriving, we see both Asta and Yuno turn their grimoires for the ceremony, which allows them to gain entry. And when they're inside there, and after a bunch of anti-magic birds begin to check them, with Asta acquiring narrow because of this is when we will then see them take on the Magic Knight entrance exams, with the difference being the fact that Asta did not bump into Yami. As now turning to the events that were happening inside the exams, we end up seeing both Asta and Yuno end up passing through them relatively easily, with Asta pretty much compensating for everything that involves magic, as Asta will be passing everything in the most unusual way possible. Whether it be when it comes to distance attacks, Asta will send a wave of anti-magic, which ends up catching the judges off guard but ends up working regardless. When it comes to flying on the broom, Asta ends up pulling out the sword to just simply ride on it as if it was a surfboard, again catching everyone off guard. So basically, Asta ends up passing everything but in the most unusual way possible. As eventually it was finally time for the 1v1 matches, to which Asta ends up passing. I'm not going to go ahead and even entertain this section, mostly because of the fact that it makes no difference. Asta is going to end up passing regardless. So with that, we end up seeing Asta eventually end up passing all the exams, before finally it was time for them to select the Magic Knight squad. And eventually, after Yuno ends up getting chosen for the Golden Dawn, it was finally time for Asta, and when Asta steps up to the plate, he of course ends up joining the Black Bulls, with Yami actually raising his hand in his timeline, as he truly was interested in Asta joining his squad, as he tells Asta that he was funny throughout the entire time of the exams, since everything that Asta was doing was the most unusual way to pass the Magic Knight entrance exams. But now with this taken care of, this is where we then see the end of the exams, as both Asta and Yuno then go their separate ways, with both of them wishing the other one good luck, as we then see Asta then rush over to his squad as he begins making small talk with both Finral as well as Gordon, as this is where we then do a change of scenes. Turning to when they arrive at the Black Bulls base, we end up seeing things play out pretty similar to the main timeline, as Yami ends up actually introducing Asta to the Black Bulls after smashing his base wide open, as we end up seeing basically the chaos happening within, and after Yami ends up telling everyone to settle down while destroying some of the base, this is when Asta would then get the introductions out the way, introducing himself, which caused the rest of the Black Bulls to immediately, greet him, with Magma of course telling him that he did not join the Black Bulls until he had completed the baptism. Now this is where things get interesting. As Asta would of course have no choice but to take the baptism, he'll be facing off against Magma, with Magma telling Asta that he has to dodge and deflect pretty much all his attacks. But to the shock of everyone, after Magma ends up creating his fireball, to everyone's surprise, you'll see that Asta didn't get in a stance, he didn't pull out any weapons or anything, he didn't even activate his magic, which they still don't know that Asta has no magic at all, except for Yami, who's already beginning to put the details together. As is when Asta instead just calmly stands there with a confident smile on his face, telling Magma that he's not going to dodge or do any of that. As instead, he confidently declares that he's going to tank all of Magma's attacks without once ever letting his back hit the ground. Now this will cause all of them to look at Asta as if he was insane, but Yami, instead of doing any of that, would actually smile as he looks at Asta with interest, as he then tells Magma to do exactly what Asta says. Now Magma looks at Yami as if he was insane, and so does everyone else, but Yami ends up declaring it once again firmly. Now this causes Magma to sweat as he then tells Asta not to die, as he would then chuck the fireball directly at Asta's face. And to the surprise of everyone, Asta did exactly as he promised, not moving once at all, as the fireball ends up hitting him clear in the face and causes everyone to just look at him in complete shock and horror, as they think that Asta may have been seriously injured from it. But to their surprise, after the smoke had been dismissed, they'll see that Asta was completely fine, as other than the smoke coming from his head, as well as a couple of burn marks, Asta was a-okay. And to their surprise, they'll see as the burn marks would just completely heal up immediately, as Asta would then ask Magma if that was all he got. Now this will cause everyone to just continue looking at him in shock, all the while Magma by this point was hyped. He begins shouting how manly Asta was before suddenly summoning out his fire bat, as he begins just swinging wildly and sending multiple fireballs directly at Asta, while Asta just calmly standing there with a smile on his face as he tanks every last one of them. And no matter how many fireballs were sent at Asta, every last one of them will be doing little to no damage at all to him, causing the Black Bulls to look at the scene once again in shock. All the while Yami by this point had already finally figured out Asta's ability, as even though it was only for a brief instant, he had finally been able to put all the details together to figure it out. And to say that he was impressed would be an understatement, as he actually looks at Asta with a smirk, already feeling quite happy and actually really excited to see exactly what his full potential going to be like in the future. As finally, after one more wave of fireballs, this is where we then see Asta and Magma once again, but by this point Asta had finally completed the challenge, as Magma unfortunately was way too tired to continue on. But right before Magma collapses on the ground, this is when he then firmly declares to Asta that he is manly. And this would end up causing all the Black Bulls to immediately rush over to Asta, leaving Magma there as he's just laying there on the ground, completely unconscious by this point since he was exhausted. As this will be how Asta would gain entry into the Black Bulls and be fully accepted as a member. As now with this part taken care of, I'm now going to skim forward with the story. Moving past this event, we end up seeing a couple of things play out pretty similar to the main timeline, with the outcome remaining the exact same way. We see Asta encounter Noelle on the very next day at the Black Bulls, as during this time they have a pretty similar interactions like they did in the main timeline, with the outcome remaining the same, with Asta saving Noelle, and Noelle eventually getting that crush on Asta. Now after this time, we see Asta mostly be dedicated to his training, as well as cleaning up the Black Bulls base, as of course he's always there to help out everyone, as well as wanting to prove himself. But during this time, this is when both Magma as well as Yami then return back to the Black Bulls base, as they end up revealing that they lost the gamble, as this ends up causing Asta to go on his very first mission, along with Noelle, with Magma leading the charge. As we soon see the group end up arriving at their desired location, with Asta being the one to take care of all the work by himself, but this time much easier and quicker because of his enhanced strength and speed. All the while, Noelle and Magma would just be there resting, letting Asta take care of it, as both of them were just amazed by Asta's strength. Now after Asta was done taking care of all this, we eventually end up seeing that Asta actually took care of this much quicker than he did in the main timeline, allowing the Black Bulls to return back to the village much sooner, which was good because that'll be during the time when Heath would end up arriving. As after the Black Bulls end up turning in all the boars and everything, Heath and his men would end up arriving demanding for the magic stone, to which the village chief tells them that he has no idea exactly what they mean, causing Heath to be annoyed as he ends up telling him that he doesn't have enough time for this. Now after this is where we would then get a fight between Heath and his men as well as the Black Bulls, as Heath begins to get increasingly annoyed about the fact that they don't have the magic stone or that they're not giving it to him, so he decides to attack the villagers, causing Magma to immediately retaliate back and causing the fight to begin. as this is where we then see each one of the Black Bulls face off against their individual battles, with Noel staying back in order to make sure to protect the villagers, all the while Asta will be there taking care of the grunt, and Magma being the one to face off against the leader, this being Heath. Now unfortunately, although Magma is pretty strong, and although he actually was able to recover some of his magic, unfortunately he was not able to recover all of it, meaning that he actually loses to Heath in this timeline, as this causes Magma to be pretty pissed off, as he'll be on the ground with Heath actually trying to kill off Magma now that he was weakened. But right before he gets the chance though, this one suddenly he would then be blown back by a powerful punch by none other than Asta. As Heath ends up of course recovering from the blow, he ends up looking at Asta in surprise, wondering how he did that, only to turn around and sees that all his men that had been trying to fight off against Asta were all laid out. As he ends up looking at Asta in surprise, as he realized that Asta was in a different league entirely compared to Magma. As after coming to this quick understanding, this is where we will then see the enemy leader immediately begin to just power up. As he ends up sending a generous ice shard directly at Asta, but to his surprise, he will see that Asta will just calmly walk through the attack. As even though he gets hit by it, Asta shrugs it off as the injury ends up immediately healing up as he approaches Heath. Now, seeing this, of course the enemy leader continues trying once again, sending out a generous wave of ice shards, but Asta once again continues walking, not changing his path for a second. Now this causes Heath to be very annoyed before he summons out a generous ice shard, thinking that that would do something to Asta. And as soon as Asta sees the attack, he actually lets himself get hit by it, causing everyone to look on in shock as they think that Asta might actually be dead. But right as they were in the process of thinking this, they will see that Asta's body had not once hit the ground, as he was still standing even though he had a generous ice shard imbued into his stomach. As this is when Asta would then all he would do is just immediately tense up, flexing his muscles, and when he does, the ice shard immediately breaks. But just as it breaks, Asta would also end up releasing a black and red energy, as this energy ends up completely dissolving the ice shard, turning it into nothing, causing everyone to be looking at him in complete shock, including the enemy leader, which gives Asta the perfect opportunity to immediately lay him out, as Asta barrages this man with a bunch of blows, telling him and cursing him for ever trying to attack the villagers in the first place, as he ends up knocking him out with one last hard punch that craters him into the ground, as Asta's fists were literally marked across his face, putting an end to the fight. As after this is where we then see the Black Bulls then capture Heath as well as the rest of his men as they try to interrogate them, only for Heath to then kill every last one of them, including himself, in order not to reveal any information, causing the Black Bulls to be appalled by their cruel nature. But at least the one good thing is the fact that the village chief actually survived in this timeline. And not only that, but the Black Bulls were rewarded for this mission. As now with this completed, this is where we then see the Black Bulls then report back to Yami, who ends up reporting it back to the Wizard King, who ends up giving the Black Bulls a star for the very first time. As now with this section completed, this is where we can now continue on with the story. Moving past these events that happen at Magma's village, we end up seeing Asta once again, but by this point we see Asta now taking on more missions for the Black Bulls, more than he did in the original timeline. Because you see, after the mission that happened at Magma's village, we see that Asta actually decides to take on more mission as a way of training and also as a way to gain more battle experience. As thanks to this, Asta begins to get more and more competent with his ability, and not only that, but his control over Libe's anti-magic has increased even more, as Asta is already beginning to think of a new idea, with Libe of course helping him every step of the way. But as we now turn back to Asta in the present, we see Asta right now chilling at the Black Bull's base, as he was already thinking about what the next mission was to take, only for Yami to interrupt him. As Yami reveals to Asta about the fact that the Wizard King personally actually requested Asta on this mission, with Asta being surprised by it as well as the rest of the Black Bulls. As after that, this is where we then see Asta get assigned his team, this being Luck and Noel, as we soon see him then rush off to the dungeon along with his team. They'll go in there exploring the dungeon, making sure to set off any traps that were there, of course being Luck being the one to do so, but while they were doing this is when Luck would then soon leave the group, as he had sensed the fight happening and wanted to check it out for himself, leaving Asta and Noel for a while until eventually the Golden Dawn would then meet them. Now you'll see the Golden Dawn, and more precisely Asta and Yuno, then catch up, with Noel going to talk to Mimosa, as after the two end up catching up, eventually they'll go their separate ways, with Yuno declaring a challenge to Asta to see who can get to the treasure room first, while Asta accepting it, of course treating it as just good old fun competition. Now after this, we end up turning to when the Golden Dawn then arrived to the treasure room, but as they were there, they'll then soon encounter Mars, who easily ends up defeating every last one of them, leaving Yuno the only one left standing, as Yuno prepares to counter Mars' next attack, as he was about to use every last bit of magic into it, only for the Black Bulls to then intervene, as Asta comes in there to save Yuno, with Luck and Noel also being there to protect Klaus and Mimosa. As Asta, now that he had arrived, will then tell Yuno to leave the rest up to him, while the rest of the group stays behind so that way they can protect the others. So with that, this is where we then see Asta face off against Mars. As turning to Asta, we will see him then rush at Mars, with Mars responding by sending a ginormous amount of minerals directly towards Asta. As these minerals were meant to pierce through Asta's flesh, but to the surprise of everyone, as soon as the attacks would hit Asta, he would just simply end up shrugging them off and just doing what he usually does, powering through the attacks. Now this will cause Klaus as well as Mimosa to be looking at Asta in shock, all while the Black Bulls and Yuno would then smirk, already knowing exactly what type of timing Asta was on. As Asta would continue charging through the attacks, this is when we would then see him jump up in the air, and everyone would be once again surprised by his physical strength, as literally by jumping up in the air, Asta was already right in front of Mars. As Mars, right before he could even respond, he would then be punched in the gut and be sent flying up into the air of the entire dungeon. Now, this will catch Mars off guard as he'll be wheezing from pain, with Asta asking Mars if that was all he got. In hearing Asta taunt him, this will cause Mars to be even more enraged, as he will then begin to activate his second magic. As we see flames then erupt as they begin healing off the injuries that Asta had inflicted on him, as this is when we would then see Mars then form the mineral golem, as he tells Asta that he's gonna perish. Now, this will cause everyone to immediately cry out and worry for Asta, except for Yuno, who looks at Asta with a smirk, as he already knows that something like this was not going to defeat him. As Asta seeing the ginormous mineral golem now approaching him, with Mars taunting Asta as he was just standing there, this is when we would then see Asta finally unleash his grimoire for the first time. As no one there except for Yuno has ever seen Asta use the grimoire. As this is when we would then see Asta then bring out the anti-magic blade. Seeing a ginormous sword, this is when Mars would then begin to taunt Asta, as he creates a ginormous sword made out of minerals, as he tries to send it directly at Asta, telling him that it doesn't matter what type of sword Asta has, it was pointless against him, and also telling Asta that he was a weakling, but Asta says nothing more. As we see for a brief moment, Asta's eyes flash red, as the next moment, Asta would then simply disappear in a black and red stream. As in the next few moments after this is where we will then see in a quick flash, we will see Asta destroy the ginormous mineral blade, cut through Mars's golem, and eventually get to Mars himself, where he ends up landing a very powerful anti-magic slash right across his Mars chest, causing him to be sent flying out of the golem and causing him to be sent flying and crashing directly into the grounds of the dungeon, cratering himself in, causing everyone to be looking at Asta in shock once again, as they will be completely blown away by what he just did, with Yuno smiling, already knowing that he still has a lot more training to do if he wants to catch up to him. But now, with this fight completed, this is where we would then see the Black Bulls and the Golden Dawn then recover from any injuries that they may have had, as they will then rush over to the treasure room. And after collecting all the items that were there, as we see Yuno acquire the Wind Spirit, and also getting the other anti-magic blade, thanks to Libe navigating him throughout the dungeon to find it, this is when we will then see the group end up leaving it, as the dungeon was collapsing. Luckily for Mars, his teammates were there to pick him up after he lost the fight against Asta. As now that the Black Bulls and the Golden Dawn were out, this is where we will then see Klaus then apologize to both Asta and Yuno for his rude actions towards them, all because of the fact they were commoners and lower ranking. But after seeing everything that they accomplished in the dungeon, his respect for them has skyrocketed, and he does apologize for his past actions, with Asta and Yuno telling him that it was cool. But now with this all taken care of, and with the dungeon now finally finished, this is where we will then see both teams then go their separate ways, as they report this to their captains, with their captains telling them to go report to the Wizard King. We see both teams deciding to go to the capital to report this to the Wizard King, with Luck deciding to stay behind for the Black Bulls, considering the fact he just didn't want to go to the capital, leaving Asta and Noel to go there by themselves. As we end up seeing them go to the capital, with them eventually encountering the Golden Dawn, with of course both of them catching up with each other and greeting each other, with Mimosa secretly revealing to Noel about the fact that she has a crush on Asta, as we then end up seeing both of them end up going to meet the Wizard King. Now turning to when they meet Julius, we see them of course give the report about everything that happened, and when Julius ends up hearing about this, he was very interested in what Asta and Yuno were capable of, as when Yuno ends up revealing about the spell, Julius was very happy about it, but when Asta ends up showing him his grimoire, he of course was very confused about it, until he then asked Asta about himself. As he questions Asta about exactly what his ability is, with everyone actually looking at Asta with interest, including Yuno on this one, considering the fact that although he had his own theories about it, currently right now he still doesn't know exactly what is Asta's ability. And when Asta ends up seeing how everyone else was reacting, this is when Asta shrugs, as to him it wasn't really that much of a big deal, as he calmly states that he can kind of just simply adapt to any and all types of magic. Now this will end up catching everyone by surprise, including Yuno, as although he theorized it, he still simply could not believe it, as this will cause Julius to immediately have stars in his eyes, as every last one of them will begin to ask Asta rapid fire questions, with Asta trying his best to answer them, as basically he explains about exactly how this whole ability ends up working. As after explaining all this to them, everyone would just be blown away, as they just simply could not believe that the Black Bulls had acquired such a powerhouse, and they still did not know exactly what his full capabilities are, considering the fact they have no idea exactly what his grimoire or basically what the anti-magic blade is capable of, considering the fact that Asta just simply has not told them yet. So yeah, basically they only know one of Asta's abilities, they don't know about the rest of them. So after getting this out of the way though, eventually Julius then invites them to go to the ceremony, as we end up seeing the ceremony then play out the exact same way, before finally it was finally time for the banquet. Now when they were at the banquet, we see Asta and Yuno just chilling in the corner, while the nobles were giving them dirty looks, but unfortunately for them, they picked the wrong commoners, as they simply just did not care. Asta and Yuno were just there chilling, eating food, with Asta really enjoying himself. But this will all be interrupted when Noelle gets approached by her siblings, who begin making fun of her and spilling water on her. As Asta seeing this would then intervene, causing the vice captain of the Golden Dawn to try to restrain him. But this went to the surprise of everyone, when the vice captain of the Golden Dawn tries to restrain Asta with sand magic, Asta would walk through the sand armor. Like literally, even though it was trying to restrain him, Asta would just continue walking with the sand armor being able to do nothing to stop him from moving. As literally, it was pointlessly trying to pull him away, but Asta literally just walked through its arms, causing him to break and causing the spell to just collapse. As this would surprise everyone. Now Solid seeing this would then tell Asta to humble himself, as he then shoots off a water spear, only for Asta to then backhand it, causing him to be sent to another table and causing an enormous amount of smoke to fill in the entire area. Now Noelle's sister then tries to intervene as well, as she then begins to send out a smoke directly towards Asta, trying to get him to fall unconscious because of it, only for Asta to once again just simply ignore it. As after finally arriving to Noelle, this is when Asta would then actually end up picking up a simple paper towel and just wiping out all the water that fell on top of her, asking her if she was alright, to which she will nod, of course, in a whole blushing fangirling manner, before Asta then looks at Solid before telling him straight to his face that he was nothing more but a joke. Now hearing this will cause the entire area to go tense, as this is when Solid would then lose his shit, as he begins to release a ginormous amount of magic, telling Asta that he was nothing compared to him. But right before he can get to attacking Asta, Noelle would then intervene, telling Solid that now was not the good time, before looking at Asta and telling him to know his place, as he begins to release the pressure of a captain. Now this pressure will cause everyone in the entire room to immediately tense up, and Asta, even though he felt this pressure hit him all at once, he was not at all scared. In fact, he immediately turned his attention onto Noelle and began to approach him. Now everyone would look at Asta as if he was stupid because of this, but to their surprise, as every single time Asta would take a step, Noelle would up the pressure, Asta would just continue walking. It was as if the pressure was not even there for Asta, as Asta was completely unaffected by it. As after finally taking a few more steps, this is where we will then see Asta then be face to face with Noelle, as he looks him dead in the eyes before telling him straight to his face that he was a terrible big brother. Now this will cause Nozelle's pressure to immediately skyrocket, causing the entire banquet hall to shake even more, as Noelle will be glaring angrily at Asta, with Asta staring him down exactly as he did earlier before, not at all persuaded by the pressure at all, not at all showing even a little bit of fear or even flinching, as Asta was ready to fight at any moment if necessary. As this will cause everyone to immediately tense up, as they think that a fight was about to break out. Luckily, however, Frigolian would then intervene, putting an end to the entire argument, as finally things begin to settle down. Only for it to be picked up once again, as this is when one of the people that was working for Julius would then enter inside the banquet, announcing that the kingdom was under attack, as flames begin to erupt around the capital, as undead were actually rushing out there attacking citizens. Now, the Magic Knights seeing this would immediately begin to try to think of a plan, but just as they were in the process of doing so, Asta would instead actually rush out, bursting through a window, as he immediately tries to rush over there to help out the people, with Noelle and also Leopold rushing out there to help him out, leaving the rest of them behind. As now, changing scenes, this is where we will then see Asta as he'll be running throughout the capital trying his best to help out anyone that was nearby. But during the time of doing this, he would then soon stumble upon Hades, who was actually about to attack a little girl. Now seeing this, Asta will move fast, using his superior speed and strength to immediately blitz Hades and actually punch him away from the girl, causing Hades to be sent flying and crashing into a wall. As he'll be there actually screaming out in agonizing pain, all the while Asta will be there making sure that the little girl was okay. And after seeing that she was fine, Asta would then turn his attention back to Hades. Now this will be by the time that Noelle ended up arriving, as Asta then tells the little girl to go over there to Noelle, leaving Asta there to face off against Hades by himself. Now Hades, after finally getting out of the crater, he will then curse out Asta as he begins to use his magic to summon out one of his horrific creations, and try to use it to overpower Asta, only to realize that Asta was a complete mismatch for Hades. As we begin to see Asta take down and actually defeat this creation that Hades has summoned in just a simple punch. As Hades will be looking at it in complete shock, unable to believe that this kid was able to beat it with just one punch. Not only that, but he sensed zero magic from that attack at all. Now this will cause Hades to panic as he begins to summon out more and more of his creations, only for Asta to completely dog them, without even bringing out the anti-magic blade. Now as Asta continues approaching Hades begins to panic as he begins to tell Asta to settle down, trying to make it seem as if all this was just nothing more but a prank. But right before Hades can really get to begging, this when suddenly portals would then open up, as we would then see more members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun then appear, as they all beginning to jump Asta. Now Asta gets pissed, but right before he can get to countering them, this is when Leopold will end up arriving, as he ends up firmly declaring that Asta is his rival while taking down the rest of the guys that were there, assisting Asta. Now this is where we will then get a cool moment between Asta and Leopold, as more members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun then begin to get summoned out, with Leopold and Asta being there to take them down, all while Hades would just be there trying to get away. But right before he can really get too far away from them, this is when Asta would then chuck the anti-magic blade directly into Hades' shoulder, causing him to be pinned to a nearby building wall and causing him to scream out in pain as his shoulder was literally teared open thanks to Asta's anti-magic blade, as Asta threw that thing with precision. As now with Hades captured, we will see all the corpse puppets that were all around, this being the undead, all beginning to actually collapse down to the ground since their wielder was now basically out of commission. And this will be by the time that Fagolion would finally end up arriving, as he ends up seeing what was happening and he actually looks upon Asta and Leopold in shock, as he compliments his little brother but looks at Asta in just amazement, telling him that so far he seems to have all this taken care of. But right before they can really get into celebrating though, this is when we would then see Fagolion then almost be captured as he actually was about to fall into a portal. But Asta is luckily able to see this just in time, as he ends up actually pulling out another anti-magic blade and chucks it directly at the portal, causing it to no longer activate. Now this will luckily save Fagolion, but also cause Fagolion to know exactly where these portals were opening from, as this is where we will then see Fagolion then summon out a ginormous flaming tornado on top of a pile of undead that were nearby. As this is when we will then hear the scream of Voltos, who was working for the Eye of the Midnight Sun, as he'll be screaming out in agony, causing the rest of the group that was there, this being Asta, Leopold, and Noelle, who was watching from nearby, to just look at the scene in complete shock, as they finally begin to understand exactly what is the power gap between them and the captains. As turning back, we end up seeing Fagolion finally take care of Voltos, as he was now unconscious due to all the pain, as we then see Fagolion restrain not only Voltos but also Hades, who was unconscious, as well as the rest of the Eye of the Midnight Sun group that were laid out by Leopold and Asta. As now that these group members were taken care of and captured, this basically brings an end to the attack that was happening at the capital. As soon afterwards, you would then see the rest of the Magic Knights end up arriving, as it would then all be huddled up to discuss about the events that had transpired. Asta will be there talking to Klaus, Mimosa, and Yuno, as basically they were all just talking about their own fights and everything. But while this was happening, this is when Julius will end up arriving, as he basically begins to announce the presence of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, basically letting them all know that there is a group targeting the capital, as well as what type of magic the leader uses, this being light magic, which causes the rest of the Magic Knight squad to tense up, realizing that there might be a future battle at hand. But luckily, Julius reassures them that everything was going to be fine and that they will deal with it when the time comes. As after this meeting, this is where we will then see the rest of the squads then go their separate ways, as we see Asta and his group then return back to the Black Bull's base. Along the way, they of course had encountered the Golden Dawn, to which Yuno had showed Asta his new power boost, only for Asta to literally backhand the spell that Yuno had sent at him, causing the Wind Spirit who was looking on to be looking at Asta with curiosity, wondering how exactly did a human with no magic at all had been able to do something like that. As now that we got this part taken care of, we can now move forward with the next few parts, as I'm going to be skimming forward a little bit. Moving past the attack on the capital, we end up seeing Asta, as during this time he will mostly stick to his daily routine of training while also going on missions. Now during that time, Asta does end up encountering Finral, who ends up asking Asta to go to a mixer along with him and Luck, to which he does so. Now all the things that happen at the mixer remain the exact same way, as by the end of it, Asta does end up meeting with Rebecca and actually talking with her, with the two of them actually getting along, until eventually Asta then gets invited by Rebecca to come visit her siblings, to which Asta of course does so. And turning to the very next day, when Asta does so, we see him play with the kids, even meet Marie, which is Ghosh's sister, which causes Ghosh to get into a very jealous rage until eventually things finally settle down. As after this, we will see Asta then stay the night at Rebecca's village, and when he does, we will then see that in the middle of the night, all the kids would be taken by Hage and Barrow, causing Asta to be alerted by this, as Rebecca ends up crying into his room, basically explaining that her siblings were gone. This ends up pissing off Asta as he ends up rushing out, and when he does, he sees the rest of the parents of the kids actually worried for their children, which forces Asta to then go on a mission with Ghosh as well as Sister Teresa in order to retrieve the kids. Noelle will be at the village as well, as we already know that she was stalking Asta throughout this entire time, as she ends up deciding to stay behind in order to assist the parents if they need any help, leaving Asta and the rest of the group to go there without needing to protect the village just in case. As during this time, we end up seeing them end up arriving there, with Asta of course helping one of Rebecca's siblings and telling him to be brave, before suddenly rushing in there to save the rest of the kids. Now by the time that Asta ends up arriving at the cave, along with Sister Teresa, you already see Ghosh in the midst of combat, before eventually Ghosh then decides to just simply take Marie and leave the rest of the kids behind, causing Asta to be forced to take down both Hage and Barrow by himself. But luckily in this timeline, this was a feat that Asta was actually capable of doing, as Asta is able to take down all the snow golems that Hage was sent at him, with Barrow of course cursing considering the fact that he would thought that Asta would be easy, considering the fact that Asta has no magic. But Asta once again proves them wrong, as he's able to take down anything that Hage throws at him, before suddenly he chucks both the anti-magic blades and pins both Hage and Barrow down to the ground, making them unable to escape from his grasp. As they end up cursing from this, with Hage panicking, this is when Asta then tells them straight to their faces that they're going to be locked up for many years for this crime, considering the fact that the damage that these two had created were permanent, since the magic they took was not going to be able to be given back to them in any way or shape or form. So this causes both Hage and Barrow to tense up, as they actually think that this is over, only for suddenly a portal to then open up, as this is when we would then see falling throughout the portal would be none other than Licht. As in this timeline, unfortunately Sally is not with them, since she is captured along with Valtos and Radius at the capital, since she was one of the people that Asta and Leopold had taken down. Now when Licht had arrived, immediately both Barrow and Hage actually look at him with a smile, thinking that he was here to save them, only to be surprised by how cruel fate was. As this is when right in front of Asta's eyes, he would then see that Licht had created two light spears and had stabbed them directly into the chest of both Hage and Barrow, killing them off immediately. Seeing this would cause Asta to look at Licht in horror, as he couldn't believe just how cruel the man was, but this would be by the time that Sister Teresa would then return back, stating that she got all the kids out of here. But this only made Asta to then suddenly scream at her to run. Now Sister Teresa will be confused until suddenly she will look at Licht, only to see him form a ginormous amount of light beams, as he would then send it directly towards her, as she sees herself actually about to get hit by it. But luckily for her though, Asta had luckily came in clutch, as suddenly she would then see one of the anti-magic blades then spin rapidly like a fidget spinner, as it would then suddenly appear right in front of Sister Teresa and spin rapidly as it deflects all of the light beams, causing her to be safe. As turning our attention back to Asta, we end up seeing him by this point sweating quite a lot, as by this point he will be thanking Levi quite a lot for saving her, as he realized that had the two of them been any second slower, then Sister Teresa may have been badly injured, if not fatally wounded to the point where she may have died, as this caused Asta to realize just how much danger they were really in. But before he can really get into thinking this is when Asta would then forcibly dodge out of the way of a light spear aimed directly at him, as Licht begins to comment on Asta, pretty much beginning to talk how Asta keeps intervening in his plans, as he remembers Asta from the Royal Capital Assault. And Asta, after hearing this, would then tell Licht to shut up, before once again reminding Sister Teresa to then run, to which she will do so, but also telling Asta to stay alive, to which Asta vows to make sure that he will. Now after Sister Teresa ends up leaving, this is where we will then see Asta then face off against Licht, as he ends up calling for his anti-magic blades as they end up appearing in his hand. Now by this point, Asta actually begins to tap into anti-magic by this point, as he realizes that he can't hold back, alright? he has to go extremely full force powerful from the very start if he even wants a chance to survive against Licht. As Liebe would then tell Asta that he will be here covering him as he begins pushing as much anti-magic into the blades and through Asta as quickly as possible. As this is where we would then see Asta's eyes flash red as we would then see him begin to get amped up by anti-magic. Now, Licht seeing all this, he would think of it as a pathetic attempt for Asta before commenting that grimoire did not belong to Asta, with Asta telling Licht to once again shut up. As after saying this, we would then see both Asta and Licht then disappear, with Licht of course disappearing in a ray of light and Asta disappearing in a stream of black and red. As with that, we would then see the two of them appearing and disappearing throughout the entire cave, causing it to shake just because of their fight. As Asta, thanks to his enhanced speed and strength, would actually be using the walls to ricochet himself to give himself an extra boost in order to keep up with Licht. With Licht of course using his light magic to just of course have an obvious speed advantage over Asta. As the two of them continue on fighting, we will see Licht actually beginning to get winded because of Asta's blows, as Asta's attacks were way heavier than Licht's, with the only thing that Licht had over Asta being the fact that he was way faster. As we continue to see the fight between the two of them go even further. But during this time, as the two of them continue clashing, this will be by the time that Gauche ends up arriving, as he came here thanks to Marie telling him to go assist Asta. But during the time that he had arrived, he will see that both Asta and Licht had separated for a moment, as we see Asta now currently right now trying to stop her time, as Liebe was gathering a generous amount of anti-magic in order for their plan to come to fruition. But unfortunately for them, Licht was not going to let them have it that easily, as Licht by this point had charged up a ginormous magical attack, as it was going to be a ginormous light beam that was going to wipe out not only Asta, but the rest of the cave. As Asta ends up cursing because of this, as he knows that he's going to be able to tank the attack, but still that's also going to make it even harder for him to actually take down Licht. This will be by the time that Gauche actually decides to step in, as he intervenes by revealing his magical eye and deflecting the ginormous blast that Licht was releasing right back at him, causing Licht to take heavy damage and also causing Gauche to literally be out of commission for the rest of the fights. As Asta seeing this happen right before his eyes would be caught off guard, as he would end up approaching Gauche wondering why exactly he did this, with Gauche telling Asta that he owed Marie a favor now. So while Gauche is now out of commission as well as Licht, this will give Asta the perfect opportunity to of course capture Licht and put an end to the Eye of the Midnight Sun, right? But unfortunately, all that would not go exactly as planned, as while Asta was trying to of course restrain Licht, he would then be sneaked by none other than Veto, as he ended up punching Asta hard in the face with a beast claw, causing Asta to be thrown off guard and actually sending him flying away from Licht. But while Asta was getting sent flying, he would then be sent hurtling towards a generous stream of flames that were sent from Fauna, as she'll be right behind Asta, already releasing a generous burst of flames thanks to Salamander. And right before Asta can even get a chance to breathe, he will then be hit by multiple light spears by none other than Raya, as he literally took the combination of all these attacks to nearly knock Asta out of the fight. As we see Asta cratering into the walls of the cave now, with by this point the entire roof of the cave just completely blown open thanks to just the shockwaves from these attacks. As we see Asta for the very first time ever since joining the Black Bulls actually be defeated, or at least that's what it seemed. As turning our attention back to the Midnight Sun group, we see Veto, Fauna, and Raya already making sure to help up Licht, with Licht laughing at the display of Asta before telling Veto to get the grimoire, as they still had to use that for later. To which Veto would do so, already agreeing to the request, as he ends up approaching Asta's broken body, and when he does, he ends up laughing at the display before suddenly picking up the grimoire that had been knocked out of Asta's grasp. As he tries to pick it up and take it with him, however, this is when suddenly Asta would then intervene, as he would then feel Asta grab his wrist, stopping him from moving, as in a blink of an eye Asta was out of the crater and already stopping Veto from moving any further. As Asta would then just simply tell Veto to let go of the grimoire, with Veto of course laughing at Asta's display, as he would then summon out a beast claw with his other hand, punching Asta's body and thinking that it was going to send him flying. But to the surprise of Veto, as well as the rest of the Midnight Sun group, you'll see that Asta did not move an inch, as this is when we will then see a ginormous pressure fall upon the cave, causing everyone to tense up. As in the next second, we will then see Veto release a cry of pain, as we will then see that his entire wrist that was getting held by Asta had been completely crushed by him, as this will force Veto to release the grimoire and causing it to fall back onto the ground, to which Asta ends up picking it up. And after Asta ends up releasing Veto, we see Veto then jump away from Asta in order to get some distance, as we see the Eye of the Midnight Sun group now tensing up, realizing that Asta had a lot more fight within him than they thought. How little did they know how much he had left. As after Asta had gotten the grimoire, we will then see him raise his hands up into the air, and when he does, we will then see the two anti-magic blades that were on the ground then actually levitate to Asta's hands, as he was now dual wielding the both of them. And now that Asta had both the anti-magic blades in his hands, this is when he would then open his eyes to reveal that his eyes had gone from the normal green color to red. Now this will cause every member of the Eye of the Midnight Sun to immediately begin to power up and use magic, as they realized that a fight was about to begin, with Veto of course leading the charge on this one since he wants revenge for his broken wrists. But right before they can get to attacking Asta, they will then stop in their tracks, as they will then see Asta then beginning to transform, as we see two horns sprout from Asta's forehead, and not only that, but we also see two jet black wings form from his back, as this will cause them to immediately stop what they were doing as they look at him in horror, as suddenly a pressure would then fall on the entire area, as Asta for the very first time during this exchange would then speak, as he would then tell them all coldly that no matter how broken his body may be, or no matter how near death he is, no one was going to separate him from his brother. As is when suddenly, right before their eyes, they will then see Asta disappear, as in the very next few moments after this, they will then see Veto, who was once right in front of them, then be sent flying, as by the time that Veto's body had finally hit the wall, all of them would bear witness to the fact that Veto had multiple slashes across his body, and not only that, but he was more than likely dead, as they realized in only one brief instance with Asta that he was able to inflict this much damage in such a short amount of time, as this will cause Lick to realize just how much danger they were in, as he tells Raya that they have to escape, with Raya immediately summoning out a portal, only to be surprised when a ginormous anti-magic slash interrupts the portal and completely deactivates it, as Asta stares at them coldly once again, stating that they're not going anywhere, causing the group to panic, as this is when Fauna would then intervene as she summons out a ginormous wall of flames in order to get Asta to back away, only for Asta to send an anti-magic slash directly towards it, cutting it in half and blitzing right through the flames. As with that, we will then see the Eye of the Midnight Sun trying their best to get away from Asta now, as Asta was literally hunting them down while being in the cave. But during the time of Asta doing this though, this is when suddenly a portal will then open up, as it will be revealed to be none other than Finral and Yami, as by this point Noelle had actually been able to contact them, but unfortunately for them it was a little bit too late. And not only that, but they actually brought a disadvantage when it came to them actually arriving, as thanks to them arriving, Asta had changed his attention onto them, as he thought at first that they were enemies, only to see that it was Yami and Finral. And while at normal circumstances he would be happy, unfortunately it was actually a bad move, since seeing that Asta's attention was now off them, this actually gave Raya the perfect opportunity to escape with the rest of his group, allowing for the Eye of the Midnight Sun to live another day. And seeing this happening would cause Asta to be pissed, but unfortunately he wouldn't be able to maintain that for too long, as he would end up collapsing because of the fact that he just simply could not handle the transformation for much longer, as this will be where Asta would then collapse to unconsciousness, just as Finral as well as Yami would then rush over to help him, as we now fade to black. Turning from these events, we end up seeing Asta once again, as by this point Asta will be giving a report to the Wizard King, explaining in detail about everything that had occurred. And after explaining all this is when Julius would actually ask Asta for a favor, as this is where Asta would then reveal the traitor, this being the captain of the Purple Orcas, as they end up capturing him thanks to his help. As now with this taken care of, this is where Julius would then begin to give the Black Bulls the mission to hunt down all the magic stones and thwart the plans of the Midnight Sun, to which they of course accept this. Now throughout this time, after the events that happened at the cave, we see Asta really getting into his training, and by that I mean he's going even further than he did before. Because after the events at the cave, Asta had learned about his limits, as he realized that at any point in that situation, had Raya, Veto, or Fauna, or really any of the members of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, had done just a little bit more damage to Asta when they all, hit him at once, that may have caused Asta to be knocked out. As Asta realized that while yes, he is strong, in the right circumstances, anyone that is strong can be taken down. And in that circumstances, Asta had been at any moment, if they actually had been smart enough, could have been taken down by them. So due to this, Asta had to make sure that something like that can never happen, and Liebe will be there to assist him as well, since Liebe himself also panicked after everything that happened and putting the details together, considering the fact he just realized just how close he was to failing at one of his vows, as being the one to protect his brother. So with that, we see Asta and Liebe pushing themselves even further and growing even stronger, as Liebe is now able to summon out large quantities of anti-magic, and Asta is able to control that ginormous quantity of anti-magic. But moving past this explanation, this is where we will then see the Black Bulls then go to the Seabed Temple. Now, I'm not going to really talk about in details about the events that happened at the Seabed Temple, since without Veto, there really is no point. As the only real thing that actually ends up, happening in the Seabed Temple is the fact that the Black Bulls actually do end up finishing off the challenge, as they're able to get through it quite easily thanks to the help of Asta. But the one thing I do want to comment on is the fact that the Black Bulls are beginning to realize their strength right now, as they realize that they're slowly but surely beginning to get left behind. As Asta, even though he may have been a training freak and everything, Asta was still a newbie, and yet he was slowly but surely outclassing every last one of them. If not, they fully believe that he already did, and possibly is even catching up to even Yami's level. So realizing exactly that they're getting left behind, this is where the Black Bulls would actually begin to train themselves. As moving past the events at the Seabed Temple, we end up seeing the Black Bulls all beginning to train themselves and push themselves even further. As now that I'm finished talking about this is where I'm now going to skim forward with the story just a little bit more. Now after this, we see a couple of things playing out the exact same way, as the attack on the capital remains the same, with of course all the Magic Knights pulling together and putting a stop to it, as they were attacked by the Diamond Kingdom. Now after this, we will also end up getting to see the Witch's Forest arc, as this arc is going to kick off differently considering the fact that Asta did not have his broken arms, as instead it will be mostly focused on Vanessa wanting to change and also wanting to get stronger. So due to this, she thought that the best way to do it would be to go to the Witch's Forest. So with that, we end up seeing the same group as it did in the main timeline go to the Witch's Forest along with Vanessa, as thanks to them going there, they actually are able to enter to the forest, and when they do, they meet the Queen of Witches. Now that whole dispute and argument between Vanessa and the Queen of Witches still go down the same way, until suddenly the Eye of the Midnight Sun and the Diamond Kingdom attack. Now when the Diamond Kingdom attacks, we end up seeing the Black Bulls that were currently there didn't jump into action, with Asta immediately rushing over to Fauna, considering the fact that he knows that she's the most dangerous one there. Now the fight between Asta and Fauna will go very differently, as Asta in this timeline plays no games. Instead, every single time she would try to throw a fire attack at Asta and tries to get revenge for Veto, Asta would once again just simply walk through the attacks as he usually does, but when he's finally done doing so, Asta would appear right in front of her and gut punch her so hard to the point where she nearly falls unconscious. But right before Asta can land the finishing blow to fully knock her out and actually capture her, this is where actually Mars would then intervene, as he tries to protect his old childhood friend and begs Asta for her life, causing Asta to realize exactly how far he was going and also causing him to stop his attack. Now this will cause Fauna to snap back as she remembers Mars for who he was and everything, as the two of them would then reunite. But during the time of this happening, this is when Ladros will then try to intervene as he tries to attack Mars so that way Fauna can activate her salamander, so that way he could absorb it for himself and gain the power boost. But unfortunately for him, Asta had about enough of him, as he ends up chucking an anti-magic blade directly into Ladros' shoulder, stopping him from moving any further. Now Ladros of course cries out in pain and everything, but right before he could really do anything, Asta puts a stop to it, telling him to surrender now as it was over. But right before everyone can really get to celebrating, this is when the Queen of Witches will then intervene, as she then tells them that it was far from over, as she will then try using her blood magic, as she captures everyone including Asta, as she then makes a threat to Vanessa, stating that she would actually kill every last one of them for dare trying to do anything to her forest. Now this would cause Vanessa to be surprised by it and appalled, and also causing Noel to be pissed off. But Asta, instead of getting pissed off, he instead actually was smiling, as he already knew that Vanessa was no way gonna let that happen. And just like he predicted, he was right. As just as the Queen of Witches was about to actually go through with her threat, this is when Vanessa would then unlock the Red String of Fate, protecting the Black Bulls and saving them from getting injured or killed. Now this would cause of course the Queen of Witches to immediately stop her spell, as she looks at Vanessa in amazement, unable to believe that her own daughter was capable of something like this. As this is where Vanessa will basically end up renouncing her family, as she would then firmly declare that her home is at the Black Bulls. As now with this finally taken care of, this is where we will then see the group then go their separate ways, with the Black Bulls retrieving the magic stone thanks to Nero's help. As now that the Black Bulls had gotten another magic stone, and not only that, but now that they're done with the Witch's Forest, this will be finally time for them to actually have a break, as it was finally time for the Magic Knight Award ceremony. Now you see, this entire event actually plays out the exact same as it does in the main timeline, as we see Asta actually get a chance to have a break and just enjoy the festival for what it was. Even have a small miniature cute date with Noelle, although he has no idea that it really was a date. Now while this was happening, eventually it would be finally time to announce the winning squads and exactly who was first, who was second, and basically all that. And to the surprise of everyone, in this timeline, the Black Bulls end up getting first place. As thanks to Asta's hard work and dedication, the Black Bulls were actually able to get to first place, and not only that, but after the events of the Seabed Temples, the Black Bulls had also been contributing. As due to this announcement, this would cause everyone that was watching to look at them in surprise, before Asta would then be tossed up there, as he will be known as the All-Star Rookie for this one, considering the fact of just how much work he put in. And soon afterwards, we see that the Golden Dawn will be second place, as Yuna would then step up. As the two brothers would then smile at their achievements, as they'll be looked upon with amazement by everyone. Now after this and a little bit of celebrating, this is where we will then get the announcement of the Royal Magic Night exams, as they finally found the base of the Eye of the Midnight Sun and are gonna storm it. But first they need to acquire the best Magic Knights possible in order to raid through the base. As this is where the Royal Magic Night tournament would then be announced, as they're gonna find out who exactly are gonna be the best people qualified in order to enter the Royal Magic Night squad. As now, with this being the final announcement, this is where the entire ceremony would then come to an end, as Asta and Yuna would then head down. But on the way down, they end up meeting none other than Leona, who basically ends up forcing them into their training, as this will be where we then do a time skip. Now flashing forward, by the time that they were done training, we end up seeing all the squads now currently ready for the Royal Magic Night exams. As turning our attention to Asta, we end up seeing him on the same squad as he did in the main timeline, this being that he was on the squad with Mimosa and also Zora, as we end up seeing the events of the Royal Magic Night exams beginning to play out. Now the very first few matches play out the exact same way, as basically Zora ends up winning up the first match for his team by playing a very unhonorable play, at least in Asta's eyes, and soon afterwards we end up seeing Asta's team face off against Magma, with the outcome remaining the same, with the only real thing that's changing here being the fact that Magma put up much more of a fight, considering the fact that, like I said, he was actually training much more than he was in the main timeline for these exams. Now afterwards, we end up seeing the rest of the matches play out the exact same way, all the way up to the point where Finral will be nearly killed by Longoris. But during the time of this happening, and as the Black Bulls intervene, this is when Asta would then coldly tell them to start the match between him and Longoris, since by this point there was no more matches after Finral's. Now of course everyone was hesitant, but Julius would then allow it, as we end up seeing both squads then going their separate way, as it was finally time for them to begin. Now by the time that Julius then calls the match to begin, this is where things would then go completely out the window when it comes to how it was compared to the main timeline. As Asta, without any hesitation, without even talking to Mimosa or Zora, he would then enter his transformation. And this time, unlike when he came to fight Magma where he did the half transformation, in this timeline he did the full on transformation, as he actually ended up having both horns and two wings out this time, as in this timeline he was not going to hold any punches when it came to facing off against Longoris. As Asta, without even saying anything to his teammates, would then dash off to where Longoris' team was located at, as Longoris and his team were currently making their rounds trying to get to Asta's team. But just as they were doing this, they would then see suddenly a black and red light approaching them, until eventually they would then see Asta. As Longoris, seeing him, would then immediately shoot out a spatial attack towards him, as he shoots out these balls that were meant to pretty much erase Asta. But to his surprise, Asta, as soon as he came into contact with his magic, he will be completely unaffected by it, causing Longoris' eyes to go wide, right before he would then suddenly end up getting slashed by Asta, but not one slash but multiple, as Asta was disappearing and appearing all around Longoris, delivering him with multiple different slashes, as he'll be cursing him out for what he did to Finral, as everyone ends up seeing a much more cruel nature to Asta, as they realized just how serious he was when it came to his friends. Not only that, but they also realized that there was much more to Asta's character than they thought before, as they realized that Asta, although he is all good and energetic and of course always expresses good vibes, there was always another side to Asta. That there was another side that was much more cruel, much more brutal, much more ruthless, and overall one that no one wants to play games with. As finally, by the time that Asta was done with his attacks on Longoris, everyone would look at him in surprise, as the only thing that really showed them that Longoris was still alive would be the fact that he was taking very small amounts of breaths to show that he was still alive, as well as the fact that his chest was still rising up and down. As after seeing this, we would then see both of Longoris' teammates then slowly back away from Asta in fear, as they of course were terrified of him after everything he did. But as they were backing away from Asta, this is when they would then hear the sound of their crystal being cut in half, as Asta had destroyed the crystal while they were not paying attention. As this is when Asta would then tell the referee to call the match, as the referee would then announce that Asta and his team were the victors, with Asta staring down at Longoris coldly as he will be laid out on the ground, slowly breathing. As this will cause the medical staff to immediately rush over to Longoris, trying to get him some help, all the while Asta will walk away. As many people that Asta walks by actually make space for him, considering the fact that all of them were actually feeling a little bit afraid of him. As Asta right now needed some time to cool off, as he was just extremely pissed off about what Longoris had done, as he couldn't believe the way he treated Finral and the way he had done him throughout the match, as he knew that that was not a way to actually treat a brother. And him seeing all that happening to Finral and actually imagining that that was Libe made Asta extremely pissed off, as he once again vowed that he was never going to let something like that ever happen, never on his life. As we now turn to the final part of the exams. By this point, both Asta and Yuno had made it to the finals, and they were now ready to square off. Now Mimosa was very worried for Asta's condition, but Asta tells him that he was fine and that he only needed a moment to cool off, as now he was fully prepared. As just like that, when the timer eventually ends up going off, finally the battle between Asta and Yuno would then begin. Now during the beginning, we see Asta and his team as they were making their way throughout the entire terrain in order to get to Yuno's team. But on the way there, they then encounter Yuno, who after spotting Asta's team would then attack them, with Asta having no choice but to deflect all of Yuno's attacks while telling his team to go on ahead, considering the fact that he didn't want his team's crystal to be broken, to which Mimosa as well as Zoro would then agree to this, as they end up separating from Asta, leaving him alone to face off against Yuno. As we end up seeing Yuno look at Asta for a solid moment, this is when suddenly he would then tell Asta to bring everything he's got, even bringing up that power boost that he had during the fight against Longoris, as he wants to face Asta at his best. Now when Asta hears this, he immediately tells Yuno that he was not going to do it, to which Yuno ends up responding that he's just going to simply have to force him. As after saying that, this is where Yuno would then suddenly attack Asta with a bombarding amount of wind attacks, with Asta deflecting each one of them still at base form. Now luckily, Asta is able to use the entire terrain around him to his advantage, as he begins leaping and bouncing himself off of it, ricocheting from them actually, as he ends up using it to gain momentum, like he did in the fight against Licht. As this causes Asta to get the speed advantage over Yuno, as this causes Yuno to have a hard time against Asta since he couldn't even hit him now. And not only that, but Asta's durability was off the charts as well. As Yuno continues trying to look for Asta and tries to time his movements, unfortunately for him, it was way too late, as Asta ends up appearing right behind him and landing him with a clean 2 slashes across the back, causing Yuno to be piling into the ground, while Asta just calmly and still looking at Yuno, already knowing that that was not going to knock him out. As Yuno ends up getting up, he ends up cursing, as this is when he would then call upon the Wind Spirit, already knowing that now it was finally time for them to go all out, and also seeing him transform within Smirk, as he would then call out Li-Bei's name. Now with that, this is where we will then see both of them enter their transformation, as Yuno enters the Spirit Dive while Asta just enters his Black Mode, but only using 25% of it, as we end up seeing the small little horn appear on the side, only one horn though, and a small little wing on his back, as Asta was still refusing to not go all out against Yuno. As the two brothers were finally finished their transformation, this is when the two of them would then dash at each other, as their clash would literally send shockwaves around the entire battlefield, as the two of them then begin to bombard themselves with blows. Now, although Yuno actually did get a powerful speed boost because of this transformation, unfortunately when it came to damaging Asta, he was having a much harder time than before, and to think that Asta still wasn't even going all out, as Asta by this point was still using only the 25%, and Yuno, even though he can land powerful blows and everything, Asta would either dodge the blows, not only that, but whenever it came to actually tanking them, Asta was great at it, as he's easily able to tank any blow that Yuno sends at him, basically making this a very one-sided battle. But even then, Yuno will not give up, as Yuno begins to dive even further into the Spirit Dive, causing him to actually gain a second wing, as this will cause him to gain another boost of speed, as he begins literally blitzing around the entire battlefield surrounding Asta, as he sends wind blast after wind blast, causing Asta to actually get bombarded by this, and even then he couldn't just deflect them all. As Asta would actually begin complimenting Yuno on his strength, this is when Yuno would then smirk, as you see the real reason why Yuno is trying his best to really beat Asta in this one, even though Asta's not going after the title for Wizard King. And the only reason why Asta and Yuno are rivals is because of the fact that in this timeline, Yuno feels as if the day that he actually is able to beat Asta is the day that he's truly ready to become Wizard King. Because he knows how strong Asta is. He knows how much potential Asta has. And he feels that the very day he beats him is the day that he's fully ready to become Wizard King. So due to that, Yuno was currently right now giving it his all. As we see the fight between the two of them continue on, both of them clashing as each one of them was sent their respective attacks at the other. Eventually it finally narrows down to one last attack. As we then see the two of them then separate after one last clash, as both of them would then get slammed into their own respective mountains, as we end up seeing Asta and Yuno then emerge from them, both of them having scratches and bruises, although Yuno's looking worse than Asta, as this is when both of them then prepare their final attacks. As Yuno begins to conjure up a ginormous amount of wind, as he was about to release a Spirit Storm, with Asta actually just charging up one more anti-magic slash that he was going to send it directly at Yuno. As the two of them would then stare down at each other in the midst of this process, with both of them sending the other one a nod as a sign of respect, as they already knew that this collision between the two of them was going to end the fight here and now. As after charging up their respective attacks, they would then send at each other, as Yuno would release a ginormous beam of wind, with Asta releasing just one simple slash. And just like that, everyone would watch in shock as these two attacks will end up colliding with each other, and to the surprise of Yuno, his Spirit Storm will be easily cut through by Asta's anti-magic slash, as Asta will be looking at Yuno with a nod, with Yuno saying nothing more but smiling, as he already knows that, yup, this was the expected outcome. But you know what, that just simply meant that he had more time to grow. As already accepting his fate, this is when Yuno would then be hit by the anti-magic slash, as it was easily able to cut apart his Spirit Storm, as this will be the time that both Zora as well as Mimosa have been able to destroy Yuno's crystal, leading to Asta and his team winning the match. As this will be the conclusion to the Royal Magic Night exams, as we now do another time skip. Now moving forward after a couple of days after the whole exams, this is when we will then see those that passed in the main timeline being passed in this timeline, with the only difference here being the fact that Magma in this timeline actually passed, considering the fact that I still felt it was very unfair about the fact that Magma did not pass in the main timeline. I mean the dude literally was at a disadvantage. He did not have a large amount of magic, and not only that, but he was literally facing off against a guy who literally counters any type of magic. He literally runs anti-magic. And even then, he was able to put up a very good fight. So the fact he wasn't even added into the Royal Magic Knights really pissed me off. But now in this timeline, he's actually added. As now with that said, this is where we would then see the squads then be formed, as Mary Leona would then give a speech about them entering the base and exactly what their plan is, before it was finally time for them to enter the base of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. As we see all the Magic Knight squads will then charge in, with Mary Leona leading the charge as she'll be going on a rampage. Asta will be there following her as he'll be doing his best to help out as well. Now I'm not gonna lie to you, in this timeline, the events that happen in the base are going completely off the canon on this one. And the main reason for this one is because of the fact that Asta in this timeline has severely weakened the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Think about it, there's no Sally, there's no Voltos, there's no Rades, and Veto was already killed off much sooner. So already they lost quite a bit. And not only that, but they also lost Fauna, and the only one left standing is Raya. And the magic stones, they don't even have all of them. As thanks to the Black Bulls and also thanks to Fuegoleon not being weakened, the Clover Kingdom's forces were at 100%, giving them the perfect opportunity to actually hunt down the stones much better than they did in the main timeline. As not only did the Black Bulls get the magic stones, but also other Magic Knight squads, causing them to be even more well guarded and causing the Midnight Sun to not have as many stones as they did in the main timeline. And not only that, but also causing them to actually slow down their plans even more, as basically right now currently their plans were truly falling apart right before their eyes. However, while their plans are falling, one plan was getting rushed. As you see in the shadows watching everything happen, we will see a very specific individual watching everything happening with an annoyed expression, as he couldn't believe that the plans that he created so many years ago was falling apart due to these people's incompetence. But luckily now he was here to make things right. Even though he won't be at 100%, he should have more than enough power to take care of this all by himself. as this is where we end up seeing him then begin to move, while everyone else is rampaging throughout the base. As we now turn our attention back to the Royal Magic Knights, we end up seeing them pull off pretty similar feats that they did in the main timeline, as we end up seeing Mary Leona being the one to take on Raya, and basically she has that covered, she has that locked down. And because of the fact that the stones were no longer there, and that they couldn't really get them for themselves, that meant that the whole reincarnation thing doesn't happen. As finally, it seems as if things were finally going their way, and things were finally going to be put to an end, much sooner than they did in the main timeline. But while this was happening though, this is when Asta would then decide to head off on his own, as since Mary Leona was already having Raya taken care of, and not only that, but since Zora was also there to support her, that left Asta to really just do nothing, and he just simply could not let that happen. As this is where we then see Asta rampaging throughout the base, as he'll be knocking aside any of the Eye of the Midnight Sun grunts that stood in his way, before eventually Asta ends up stopping in one particular room. Now when Asta ends up arriving at this room, he enters, and when he enters in there, he will see none other than the original Licht. But the thing is, he was still in a very coma-like state. He was unmoving and he was just standing there. Now Asta seeing this would be confused as he tries to approach him, only to be stopped by none other than the light sword, as Asta is able to dodge out of the way this time thanks to his enhanced senses. As this is when Patri would then reveal himself, as by this point Patri had reached an entire new levels of anger, as he felt true hatred for Asta at this very moment, as he curses him out for everything, for what he did to Veto, for what he did to Fauna, all those grunts that he had to sacrifice in order to put a stop to the Clover Kingdom and how all of them fall. He blamed it all on Asta, considering the fact that he was the one who started it from the very beginning. And Asta, after hearing this, says nothing more, as he tells him to turn himself in, as now it was finally over. All their plans, all their schemes, it comes to an end now. And Patri, after hearing this, just loses it, as he begins bombarding Asta with a ginormous amount of light spears, as he sends them towards Asta. And at first, Asta on instinct was about to bring out the anti-magic blades, but then stops, as after looking at Patri for a solid moment, he realized that this was nothing more but a broken waste of an excuse of a man, as Asta doesn't even bring out the anti-magic blades. Instead, he does what he usually does. He just calmly begins walking through the attack. And when he does, Patri will see him as he treats all his attacks like as if they were jokes, as they do zero effect on Asta. As he ends up cursing him out, wondering why doesn't he just disappear, with Asta saying nothing more. As Patri continues wailing about, throwing as many attacks as wildly as he can, unfortunately for him, none of them were really doing anything to Asta, until eventually he'll just be there on the ground weeping as he continues throwing attack after attack, with none of them really doing anything, as soon as they hit contact with Asta's skin, they will just immediately be destroyed. As this is when Asta will then grab Patri by the wrist, as he calmly tells him that it is over with. And Patri, after hearing this, would then suddenly break down, as he couldn't believe that all his planning, all that time spent, was now going to be wasted, as he ends up cursing out Asta, and also cursing out himself for being too weak. As Asta would continue looking at the pathetic display, this is when suddenly a voice would then ring out, as they would then agree with what Patri had said, telling him that he was pathetic. As this is when suddenly stepping out of the darkness will be none other than another member of the Eye of the Midnight Sun. But the thing is, Patri will be confused, as he wonders exactly who this member was, considering the fact he'd never seen him before. But right before he could really ask him a question, this is when Patri would then be hit by a near fatal attack, as we end up seeing Patri then get hit in the side of his stomach, causing a pretty large gap to form right there and causing him to bleed out very badly. Now as he collapses down to the ground, this is when Asta will be looking at everything with horror as he turns back to this individual, only to see as this individual's appearance begins to literally rip away, as literally the clothing, the skin, all of it begins to rip away, revealing a very horrifying appearance, the word demon, Zegred, as he'll be there cackling at the pathetic display of Patri supposedly dying right here right now, as he'll be commenting of just how weak he was, and how he couldn't believe that he gave Patri such a simple task, and even then he couldn't do it. As Patri would look at him in confusion, wondering what he meant, this is when Zegred would then reveal everything, as he calmly begins to taunt the elves, their demise, before even walking to Licht, who was still in a coma-like state, and begins to literally laugh at him, to the point where he even tries to slap Licht until Asta would then intervene, as Patri by this point was breaking down, unable to believe just what type of an insane person this demon was, with Asta responding with an angry glare, all while Zegred continues laughing at the horrified expression that Patri was showing. As Zegred then tries to get his hand away from Asta, only to be surprised to see that Asta wasn't budging. As when Zegred ends up looking at Asta, he will see that Asta's eyes by this point were being covered by his hair. As this is when Asta would then ask Zegred one question: did he enjoy what he did to the elves? And Zegred, after hearing this, would then chuckle by saying yes, as he would then try to use his word magic on Asta, as Asta would then be hit by an intense amount of gravity. But to the surprise of Zegred, Asta was not budging at all. Even though he was literally cratering into the ground, Asta did not move, as this is when Zegred would then see his arm literally snap out of place. Like legit, Asta literally just rips it out of his socket. Now this would cause Zegred to back away in horror as he looks at Asta in surprise, all the while Asta would look at the arm and just toss it away flimsily, as he would then bring out an anti-magic blade. Now Zegred ends up cursing at Asta as he would then try to regenerate his arm, but as he was doing this, Asta would already send an anti-magic slash directly at it, causing it not to be able to regenerate. As this is when Asta would then ask question number 2. Did he actually care about the amount of people that he made suffer? To which Zegred, even though he was a little bit caught off guard by Asta's, earlier attack, would respond still in the same cocky tone as before, as he still thinks they can take on Asta. As we then see him try to use his word magic once again, as he summons out a generous rain of swords on top of Asta, as they will all actually hit him and cut him. But to the surprise of Zegred, Asta would just simply regenerate and soon become completely unaffected by the blades, as Asta would then continue to approach Zegred. Now Zegred, seeing this, will then try to summon out a trident as he tries to stab it into Asta, only to be surprised as Asta's hand in that very moment becomes a blur, as in the very next minute, his trident that he tried to create and try to stab into Asta had been completely destroyed. And not only that, but he would then suddenly scream out in pain as he sees that his 2 wings had been cut off by Asta, as they were now laying on the ground right beside him. Now he would just be there looking at Asta in complete shock and horror, as Asta would be staring at him coldly now, looking him directly in the eyes, as he would see that Asta's eyes were now red. As Asta would then ask him question number 3. At any moment at all, does Zegred regret his actions? And Zegred, after hearing this, he tries to chuckle, as this is when he then calmly announced that yes, he does. As realizing now exactly what type of danger he was in, he would try to, calmly, try to de-escalate the situation. But the thing is, Asta can tell that he was lying. As this is when suddenly, Asta, in one swift motion, will then suddenly just simply chop off the head of Zegred, as he will be sent flying. Now Zegred, right before he passes away, he will look at Asta's eyes directly, and more importantly, he will see Libe right beside him. As this is when both Asta and Libe will look at him before saying at the same time that they know a filthy liar when they see one. As right before Zegred had fully passed away, this is when Asta and Libe would then calmly tell him that Lucifero and the rest of the demons will be joining him soon, as this will be the end for the word demon. As now that Zegred had been finally taken care of, we see Patri once again as he'll be crying and everything as he was fading in and out of consciousness, as he fully believed that this was the end. But luckily for him, Asta was not going to let that happen, as we see Asta calmly approach Patri before suddenly ripping up a part of his, new robe, as he would then wrap it around the wound, putting pressure on it. Now Patri ends up looking at Asta in surprise before asking him why, with Asta just simply looking down before telling him that he apologizes for everything that Patri and the rest of the elves went through, as he knows that it doesn't really mean much after everything that they went through, but still believes that he should apologize for everything that the humans did. Considering the fact that while yes, the word demon had manipulated the whole situation, it was the humans that still had killed all the elves. The attack on the elves and everything, that was still done by the humans. Yes, the demon had manipulated everything, but the humans were the ones that actually pulled the trigger and actually were the ones to do the deed. So due to that, Asta felt it was only right for him to apologize on behalf of humans. As of course Patri, seeing this, will then begin to cry, as he says nothing more, allowing Asta to continue putting pressure on the wound, as this is when he would then hear footsteps as the rest of the magic knights were now arriving. As he then smiles at looking down at Patri, just as Patri will then fall into unconsciousness. As we now do another time skip. Following the events after this, we end up seeing the entirety of the Eye of the Midnight Sun then be dealt with by the rest of the Magic Knights, as thanks to their assistance, they're able to take down all the members that were there, officially bringing an end to the group and causing the Clover Kingdom to gain victory in this battle. All the members there will be, of course, sent to prison, as they will be living there for quite a long time. And of course, Raya as well as Patri will be sent there as well. Although there was a little bit of a problem here, this being the fact that Patri was of course using William as a vessel. So this does end up leading to a problem, as William is basically revealed to be technically a traitor to the Clover Kingdom. Now, although they fully haven't decided his punishment just yet, for now they truly believe that unfortunately he can no longer remain as the captain of the Golden Dawn. As for now, they're gonna have to replace him with someone else. And no, it won't be the vice captain, since that guy's title has been easily renounced. I mean, dude, this guy wasn't even part of the Royal Magic Knight squad, so why the hell would he be captain? No, they already have someone else in mind to replace William for now, until someone else much more qualified takes his place, as it will only be a temporary captain, you know what I mean? But still, moving on, we end up seeing things play out pretty smoothly, as now that all the criminals have been captured, including Raya, as yes, Raya is still alive, as he'll be the only one really there for Patri, considering the fact that if he were to actually just simply disappear from this world, Patri will be here all by himself, and he didn't want to leave the kid there alone. Was he stupid? Yes. Did he deserve this type of fate? Not really, or at least not in Raya's eyes. So due to this, we now see Raya staying behind for Patri. As now with all this taken care of, this will basically put an end to the elf reincarnation arc. As finally, the only thing that really ends off everything is the fact that Nero makes her reveal, as by the end of the battle and everything, and after Asta has taken care of basically all the problems, Nero would reveal herself. As this is when she then begins to give a whole monologue about everything that happened when it comes to the first Wizard King, and when it came to the original Licht, which if you're wondering what happened to him, well, unfortunately, they had to put him to rest. As the real thing that was keeping him in the world of the living was literally Patri's magic. Because of the fact that now Zegrid was gone and that there was no real enemies to eliminate, this caused Patri to have no choice but to literally sever the connection with Licht, as he finally had to let him go. So with that, we will then see Licht pass away calmly, as now he's able to live in the afterlife in peace. As we now turn back to Nero, as she finally finishes up all her explanation, with Asta being there to listen to it all, as he now nods his head in understanding. As after this is when Nero would actually end up thanking Asta for everything, as finally, after so many years of suffering and everything, the very first Wizard King can now finally rest in peace, and she thanks Asta for that. With Asta, after hearing this, just smiling in response, as he tells her that he would gladly do it again in a heartbeat. As now with this, finally the first Wizard King and Licht can rest in peace, and not only that, but soon later on we end up finding out that Nero ends up joining the Black Bulls, just like she does in the main timeline. As now that Nero has truly joined the Black Bulls, we can now finally truly put an end to this arc. As we now move on to the next one, this being the Spade Kingdom. Now turning to the very beginning of the Spade Kingdom, we see things remain pretty similar to the main timeline, as Julius does end up calling Asta as well as a couple of the Black Bulls to his office before revealing that he has a couple of premonitions, as he ends up announcing basically pretty similar things as he does in the main timeline, except for one thing. When it came to Asta's whole death thing that happened in the anime, instead Julius tells Asta that his entire fate is literally unknown, as no matter how many times he tries to look into the future, he can never see anything about Asta, as he believes fully that Asta is an anomaly. Now this would cause everyone to look at Asta in pure amusement, to which, actually thinking it over, they realized that it makes sense. Asta was an oddity, as he had no magic at all, yet he was able to adapt to all magic. And not only that, but he was also able to erase magic because of anti-magic. So overall, Asta was just a living and walking anomaly, someone that just simply existed in a world that he probably shouldn't have. And Asta, after hearing this, you would think that he would panic or really be afraid, but instead, he just smiles, as this actually once again proved that his mother's statement ever since he was a kid was right, that he was truly a miracle. As after that, we will then see Julius then give the Black Bulls a mission to go to the Heart Kingdom, as he wants to actually build an alliance between the two of them so that way things can go much more smoothly for the Clover Kingdom, to which they decide to do so. Now we see everything that was happening in the journey over there remain the exact same, all the way up to the point where Asta will actually enter the kingdom as he'll be dragged in by the water spirit. Now this will play out differently but still have the same outcome, as Asta is able to easily deal with the water spirit before finally getting to Lolopachika, as he ends up meeting her for the first time, and soon after the rest of the Black Bulls end up arriving, they finally begin to talk business, as they find out about the Spade Kingdom and the Dark Triad, and when Asta gets informed about this, his expression turns dark, as this will cause everyone to tense up, as Asta, like I said, is usually all friendly, energetic, and always sending out positive energy. But when you flip that switch, it's an entirely different vibe, as the entire area tensed up when she began mentioning about the Dark Triad, and more importantly, Dainty. As when Asta ends up hearing that man's name, and more importantly about, the whole demons and everything, Asta could already sense the connections. He's able to connect the dots in his head almost instantly. As this is when Asta's eyes then flash red, as anti-magic was literally burning into his system. As Asta would then calmly tell the Heart Queen that he will most definitely kill Dainty. As he will say this in the most cold tone possible, causing chills to go down everyone's spine. And Julius, after soon hearing about all of this, then decides to agree to the terms, as he does want to have an alliance with the Heart Kingdom, and not only that, but he could see that Asta was more than ready to take on this mission, as just seeing the hatred that Asta's eyes showed when it came to speaking of the Dark Triad and more importantly Dainty, it showed everyone that this mission meant a lot more to Asta than to any of them. As this is where we now do a time skip for the monthly training. As throughout this time we see all the Magic Knight squads training for their attack on the Spade Kingdom, but during the time of training we see many of them actually begin their assault already, as they slowly but surely begin to take down bases of the Spade Kingdom, as we see the amount of Spade Kingdom soldiers numbers begin to dwindle down every single day, as this will cause all the Dark Triad to immediately be pissed off, as one by one they'll see more and more of their soldiers be taken down, before eventually the numbers would reach an all-time low, so low to the point where they simply could not afford it. As this is when Dainty then decides to take things into his own hands. As eventually, after finally the Magic Knight squads were done with their whole monthly training and were now fully going on their assault, Dainty as well as the rest of the Dark Triad would then go their separate ways, as they decided to take down the most powerful members of these assaults. As we end up seeing Vanica going after Lolopachika, we end up seeing Zenon actually going towards Yuno as well as the rest of the Golden Dawn, and finally we end up seeing Dainty going after the Black Bulls. But little did they know exactly how things were going to turn out. As when Dainty ends up arriving at the Black Bulls base, he immediately shakes up the entire base, causing it to shake to its core. Luckily, however, all the Black Bulls that were currently there were enough to actually hold him back for just a little bit, as Vanessa, thanks to her registering of fate, was making it incredibly annoying for Dainty to finish them all off. But while this was happening, however, this is when suddenly Dainty would be surprised as he would then get a cut on his cheek, as he will see the wound and be looking at it in confusion, before suddenly he would then get elbowed in the face, causing him to be sent flying and rocketing into the ground, as the rest of the Black Bulls will be looking on in confusion before suddenly smiling as they see who it is, as this is when we will then see face to face with none other than Asta, as we see a much older Asta now, but this time Asta was not smiling or really reciprocating any of that. No, Asta was dead serious as he looks at Dainty, who was on the ground. Now Dainty by this point actually chuckles at Asta's attack as he begins complimenting Asta over his strength and everything, but Asta is having none of that, as this is when Asta would then suddenly end up flying down to the ground, using of course the anti-magic blade to do so, and when he finally lands on the ground, this is when he then tells Dainty calmly that he's gonna kill him. And Dainty, after hearing this, says nothing more before suddenly laughing directly at Asta's face, as he then tells Asta to learn his so-called place, as Asta would then be hit by an intense amount of gravity, causing him to be cratering into the ground. But to the surprise of Dainty though, even though Asta was getting hit by an enormous amount of gravity, Asta was just completely fine. He was tanking it like a champ, as Asta would then suddenly walk towards Dainty, and every single step that he would take, Dainty would try to up the pressure, as this will cause Asta to remember the encounter with Nozel. But unfortunately for Dainty, even during that time of Asta's life, he was still able to stand 10 toes down. As Asta eventually gets face to face with Dainty before giving him a nasty gut punch. And right before Dainty can get a chance to recover, Asta would then let out a battle cry as he would then backhand Dainty, causing him to be sent flying and spinning in the air like a Beyblade, before crashing into a nearby tree. As this is when we would then see Asta then beginning to taunt Dainty as he was on the ground, but also beginning to taunt Lucifero. As little did Dainty and Lucifero know was the fact that Asta's tone was getting darker and darker by the second, as Asta was generating a large amount of anti-magic. As we now turn to when Dainty ends up getting up. As when Dainty ends up getting up, we end up seeing him actually smirking at Asta's power, before suddenly he would then enter into his demon transformation, going to a total of 50%. He tells Asta that was impressive, but that was the last time he was going to do that, with Asta scoffing in response. As this is when we would then see the fight between Asta and Dainty, as Dainty then begins to actually use the gravity all around him and tries to crush Asta with it, only to be surprised as Asta, even though he gets hit by the attack, then soon shrugs it off. And not only that, but he regenerates from any injuries that may have been inflicted on him. As Asta then begins to walk towards Dainty. Now Dainty, seeing this, then begins to release an onslaught of attacks on Asta. And to his surprise, even though Asta would get hit by these attacks, he would just simply adapt to them. As any injuries he would throw, Asta would heal from them. Any type of ginormous attacks that he would actually throw at Asta afterwards would be immediately perish as soon as they hit Asta, as Asta was becoming immune to his magic. And this causes Dainty to be even more surprised by this, as he would then enter his 75% transformation, flying above the air over Asta and telling Asta just how much could he handle, with Asta saying nothing more, as this is when Asta would then enter into his black mode, as he tells Dainty once again that he was going to kill him. As right before Dainty's eyes, he would then see Asta enter the transformation, as Asta, just by simply entering the transformation now, he literally creates an entire zone filled with anti-magic. As this entire zone fills in the entire area that they were in, and causing Dainty to actually lose a large amount of magic energy, as his old power that he once had was literally now basically cut in half now. As he tries to, move Asta with his gravity magic, only to see that Asta was now not budging, not even a little bit. As he tries to, question Asta about what he was doing, this is when he would then be surprised to see that as he was pointing at Asta, his arm had been completely just cut off. As he ends up looking down at his arm in shock as he tries to regenerate using his magic, only to be surprised to see that his regeneration was not working. And seeing this happening would cause Dainty to immediately panic, as he realized exactly what type of situation he was in. As he begins to ask Asta how exactly he was doing this is when Asta says nothing more, as he stares Dainty coldly in the eyes. As this is when Asta would then tell Dainty that he can see him. But the truth is, Asta was not talking to Dainty, he was talking to Lucifero. As you see the so-called King of the Demons actually looking at Asta in surprise, before suddenly he would then see Asta disappear right before Dainty's eyes. As the next thing Lucifero would see would be the fact that Asta begins putting the absolute beating on Dainty. And it wasn't like any, something sweet or anything like that. No, it was legit torture, as Asta is blitzing this man all around, giving him the beating of a lifetime, with Dainty trying to go to 100%, but Asta knocking him out every single time. And just as every single time Asta had the opportunity to truly end the fight, and I mean truly kill off Dainty, Asta would not do it, as he just simply did it just for the kicks. He did it because he enjoyed it right now, as right now they were all really seeing how Asta was when he truly hates someone, as this was the peak of hatred right here, right now. As Asta was beating the living crap out of Dainty and not once giving him the opportunity to catch his breath or even giving him the opportunity to really taste death. As right now, Dainty was literally in a never-ending combo that didn't seem to be stopping at any time. And no matter how many times Lucifero tries to pump more magic into him, it was pointless, considering the fact that Asta would just cut the flow off by using anti-magic, as this truly was a hellish cycle. As Dainty, after getting hit once again by an anti-magic slash and causing him to be cratering into the ground, he would then tell Asta to stop, but Asta wasn't hearing none of it. As Asta would then look at Dainty directly in the eyes, before to the surprise of Dainty, then suddenly let go of his anti-magic blades, as he would then proceed to jump on Dante's stomach and use it like a trampoline, as he really begins to pull something similar to what Broly did. If you guys saw the the original Broly movie, yeah, he's pulling exactly what Broly did to Goku, as he will be jumping on his stomach, cratering Dante into the ground, and when he does this, Asta will be smirking throughout the entire time, as Dante continues wailing in pain. As Asta continues doing this is when finally he then stops. He just stops like doing any of that joking stuff and just continues punching Dante in the face over and over and over again. It was truly a brutal sight for everyone, as they look at everything that was happening with a shocked expression, with Lucifer being the one who was first and center to seeing all this. This is when Asta would then firmly declare, after punching him one last time, that this will be happening to Lucifer. It may not happen now, it may not happen tomorrow, but it didn't matter. Asta would calmly tell him that he will hunt him down for all of eternity and make him feel exactly what he felt that very day. As after saying these final words, this is when Asta would then let go of Dante, as Dante, seeing this, would then think of it as an opportunity. He tries to crawl away from Asta, but unfortunately it was pointless, as by this point his body was way too weakened and way too injured, as he ends up collapsing down on the ground before looking at Asta with a horrified expression. As then, in a sign of desperation, we will then see Dante grab a ginormous amount of dirt on the ground before tossing it directly at Asta, telling Asta to go away in the most pathetic tone possible. As Asta will be there looking at the man coldly, as he will see this so-called man actually grabbing dirt, crying like a child, and tossing it directly at Asta, as he cries, telling Asta to go away. And Asta, seeing this, will then say nothing more, as he would then kick Dante away, causing him to literally roll on the ground pathetically, as this is when Asta would then pick up one of the anti-magic blades, as he would then approach Dante, who was now looking at Asta in complete terror, as every single step that Asta took, Dante would try to crawl away, but it was pointless. As right before Dante can get even further, Asta would then kick him, as he would now be laying on his back, as Asta would then step directly on Dante's chest before raising the demon blade. Now Dante, seeing all this, would then beg for his life, of course, while also saying nothing more, as he sends one last message to Lucifer, that this will be the last thing that he will ever see, right before Asta would then finally finish off Dante. As now, with Dante finally defeated, and also Lucifer technically, considering the fact that he has no more vessels to really use at the moment, so yeah, Dante was his last hope. This means that Asta had fully completed what he set out to do, but he knows that Lucifer is still out there, and he knows that when the time comes, he's going to be there to eliminate him. But for now, Asta had finally gotten the job done, and he has gotten just a small bit of revenge, as he ends up looking back at the rest of the Black Bulls, who begin calling out to Asta and actually waving at him, to which Asta will wave back as he smiles. As this is when suddenly Liebe would then appear on Asta's shoulder, as he would then tell Asta that he was hungry, causing Asta to laugh, as he would then leave the battlefield, acting as if he literally did not brutally defeat a man a few seconds ago. As this is where we now do one last time skip. Flashing forward to the years, we end up seeing the Clover Kingdom continue to progress, as soon after everything that happened with the Spade Kingdom, we see that the Clover Kingdom were actually victorious when it came to the battle between them, as every member of the Dark Triad had been taken care of, as we see that both Yuno and Noel had been able to take care of their respective opponents, as Yuno won against Zenon and Noel won against Vanica. So that means that all the members of the Dark Triad had been defeated. And now, with the leaders of the Spade Kingdom finally taken care of, this means that the Clover Kingdom as well as the Heart Kingdom had won the battle, as finally they were able to regain control over the Spade Kingdom, as they were already working for a new leader so that way that the country can return to its old progress. As turning back to the Clover Kingdom, as we now turn to multiple years in the future, we end up seeing that the Clover Kingdom by this point has gotten a new Wizard King, as it will be none other than Yuno. As yes, in this timeline, Yuno had worked up the rankings and was actually able to become Wizard King, as he was already having great ideas for the entire Clover Kingdom, making it safer and making it better, and also causing many people to have high respect for him. But while Yuno had been turned to the Wizard King, there was one person who was always there right beside him, the one who always gave Yuno advice whenever he needed it, and the one who always had been there to substitute for Yuno whenever he needed a break or just simply had other duties to take care of. The right-hand man to the Wizard King, this being none other than Asta. As well, yes, Asta did not want to become the Wizard King, that did not prevent him from actually achieving something great in life. And after Yuno had pleaded with Asta multiple times, stating that he will be great for it, eventually Asta had decided to become Yuno's right-hand man, basically being the Shadow Kage, or the Shadow Wizard King, whenever Yuno was not there, as Asta would always be there to fill in the role of leader, and also protecting the Clover Kingdom whenever it was in danger, as Asta most definitely had the power for it. Throughout the years, Asta had been able to finally defeat Lucifero, as there once was a generous war that happened between the Demon Realm and, of course, the Clover Kingdom, with Asta actually being able to take down Lucifero by himself along with Libe, as this finally gave both Asta and Libe the closure that they needed, as now that Lucifero had been taken care of, we'll see Asta soon settle down. We will see him actually get married to a very beautiful woman, who I'm gonna let you guys decide who it is, considering the fact that I just simply cannot really get into the whole shipping thing, because no matter who I pick, it's a lose-lose situation. So I'm gonna let you guys pick. Go ahead. Make it in your own mind who Asta gets married to. I don't really care. But basically, yeah, Asta gets married. He actually gets a stable life, a very good one at that, considering the fact that he's literally the right-hand man to the Wizard King. And not only that, but Asta basically had accomplished his dream that he set out from the very beginning, to create his own family, to avenge his mother's death, and basically doing everything he could to make Lichita proud. As for the final scene that we see from this What If, we see Asta smiling as he will be sitting down along with his new family, as he ends up smiling, happy to see that he had achieved everything that he needed throughout life. As this will be the end to What If Asta had been born with Mahoraga's abilities. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this What If. Sorry that this What If took so long to make. It's just a simple fact that I had no idea exactly how to go about it, but I really did want to complete it. I hope you guys really did enjoy yourself when it came to it, as I really did enjoy making this What If, as the only real problem I had is the fact that there were so many character names that I had to remember and I had to pronounce, and I kept messing up in, that it caused me to literally delete the footage, and delete the audio, then remake the video, delete the audio again, edit it, it was crazy. But luckily I was able to get it taken care of, and I'm already moving on to the next What If, which don't worry for that one, guys. I'll try to upload it sooner than I did this one, don't worry. But still, regardless of that, y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning into this What If, and I don't really got much else to really announce. So with that being said, it's your host Sage D Samurai here, and he's signing off. Peace, and have a lovely day.
Colors, this is the color, this is the color, twist the color, twist the color, twist the color, twist it, twist the color, colors, this is the color, this is the color, twist the color.